This is not the first time I have tried to do this, but I think we're going to get it this time. Fingers crossed. Hey there, folks. How you doing today? Welcome back to the channel. Please bear with the background racket that you're liable to hear throughout this production. We are on location where life happens, and sometimes there's stuff going on right out there that can be heard in here. Also, it's hot. It's Texas in the summertime. I am sweating out here, folks. But we're going to get to the fun of the video, and hopefully you will enjoy this, and let's suffer through the heat together. Out here on the table in front of me is kind of a cool-looking package. Some of you may recognize this, although it is a little different than it was last time we had it here on the channel. I have actually tested and reviewed all of these components here on the channel, just not in this particular configuration. There's a reason for that. Allow me to explain. For starters, let me tell you what we have here. We'll start here at the bottom. We have an MDT Oryx chassis that we tested on our 2023 project rifle, which was a Savage Axis. Here's some thumbnails to that series. I'll also put the links to any video that I reference in this production down here in the description so that you can check them out later for yourself if you want to. Sitting in the MDT chassis is a Savage Axis 2 18-inch bull-barreled 308 rifle. This is actually the second 308 Axis that we have had in this MDT chassis. Again, as we had mentioned in that series I mentioned earlier, we had some accuracy issues with the first one, and it wound up just being more cost productive to put a new barreled action into this chassis than to try to rebarrel the one that we already had. We got the rifle working well and shooting some nice tiny little groups, but it was with a different optic on top of it. So now that brings us to the one that we currently have mounted on this rifle. This is the ED PRS Gen 2 5-25 by 56 millimeter FIR first focal plane Z rifle scope from Discovery OPT. Wow, that was a mouthful. Which it should be. It's a huge scope. We talked about that in the review that we did for it.
That's a huge bitch!
There's the thumbnail. The link is also in the description. Yes, we have not only several videos on this rifle platform, but we have a full-length review video on this particular rifle scope. So why are we talking about them together today? Well, when we tested the Savage rifle before, we had a different scope on it. Then earlier this year, the folks over at Discovery OPT reached out to me and asked me if I would be interested in testing this rifle scope. I told them, sure, go ahead and send it out to me. I'll take a look at it. And that's what happened, and that's what I did. Now, when I tested that rifle scope, I tried it out on a couple of rifles before I did the review. I finally wound up mounting it on my Stevens Model 334 because we were doing a lot of range work with that rifle at the time. The biggest issue that we had with this big heavy rifle scope was the factory rings that came in the box, this box right here. The rings that came with the rifle scope were ridiculously high. They were very, very tall rings, and with a conventional rifle, that doesn't have an adjustable cheek piece, they were just a little too high to get a proper cheek weld on. As a result, the shooting of the rifle with that scope was kind of an unpleasant experience because I was getting a lot of cheek slap from the rifle because I couldn't get that nice firm cheek weld on it, which helps to mitigate the rifle moving around when you're trying to shoot it. Other than that, the scope performed pretty well, but the rings were kind of a deal breaker. It's a 34 millimeter tube, so a new set of rings was going to be a little bit spendy. I didn't have any laying around, and I wasn't going to spend the money to change them to try to make the scope that had been sent out to me look any better. So I did the review as it said. I posted it online. I sent a link to from the video to the folks over at Discovery OPT, and I really expected that I would never hear from them again. Boy, was I mistaken. A couple of months later, they reached back out to me and they told me, hey, you know what? We're aware of this ring issue. As a matter of fact, we are currently in production manufacturing a variety of heights of not only 34-inch, but also 30-inch rings for this scope and other platforms. Then they asked me if I would be interested in checking out one of their sets of new rings, so I told them sure. We decided on the lowest offering that they had, which I'll post a link to it up here. I think it's 0.97 of 1 inch to the center line for this set of rings, which for a 34 millimeter tube is relatively low. I wanted to try to mount this big old beast as low as I possibly could on top of the rifle. Well, if you look at how I have it set up here on the Savage axis, you'll see that there's only about 1/4 of an inch of clearance between the objective bell and that bull barrel on the Savage rifle. I would imagine, with few exceptions, this scope would work well in this low set of rings on just about any application, so long as you had a rail or mounts that would allow for the use of the 1913 style pick rail. I would say that there could be some instances where an individual might want to mount it a little bit higher, especially if you had an adjustable cheek riser. But in general, the thought process for most folks is to try to keep the center line of the scope as close to the bore axis as you possibly can. In this particular case, seems like we've pretty much got it there. I did manage to get this out to the range and check it out. I didn't get any I'll try that in English. I didn't get any video footage of that. I apologize for it, but I will tell you that the scope was much more pleasant to use when it was mounted low enough that you could maintain a proper cheek weld on top of the rifle. The Discovery OPT rings, as I mentioned before, are available in 30 and 34 millimeter sizes, and I believe they have a low, medium, and high in both size rings. Went over and checked out their Amazon store earlier today, and it looks like the rings are on sale at this moment in time, which is August 2nd, August 3rd. I think it's August the 2nd, 2024. They're on sale for $39.99 over on Amazon. You're not going to find a set of Precision 7075 T6 aluminum rings anywhere else any cheaper. I would say the overall quality and build on these rings is very, very good. I would rate it as being comparable to most other high-end scope rings that I have played around with. I had no issues getting them mounted or torquing them to spec. The hardware appears to be very robust, and there was no instances of screw heads getting messed up or anything of that nature, which is common with some low-budget rings. In addition to the individual rifle rings that they sent out here, they also sent me a 30 millimeter cantilever mount, which I have. I'll put up a picture of it here, mounted on top of an AR platform with a 30 millimeter scope. It's not one of their scopes, but it's one that I had laying around, and I've been putting that one through its paces, and that'll come out in a separate video. But now I think I've carried on about these long enough. There's really only so much you can talk about with a set of scope rings, but I'd like for you to know that they do seem to be very good quality. They, price-wise, are comparable to just about any other good deals that I found on the internet lately. And I'd like to know what you think of them. Have you seen these? Have you thought about getting a set? Do you need a set of rifle rings that are of this height? With that in mind, I have that set of high rings. If there's one of you out there that needs a set of 34 millimeter really high rings, reach out to me and let me know, and I'll see what I can do. If I still have them laying around, I might send them your way. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless.